What I'm going to say is probably the least best kept secret that I've ever been involved with. That this will be the last festival. I know there will be a certain sadness to that. There are 2 days left to it, and I hope, rather than any sadness, we're going to feel joy and a sense of celebration, and certainly a sense of this being a very memorable occasion.
The question was I going to become just a festival director, or was I still continue with my career and my teaching and performances and all of that? We had the 2004 festival, and I thought, no, there's one area we've never covered: British music. But for the moment, I'm stepping down as director, and the festival itself will stop after this festival.
I don't actually think the festival like this could run without Ralph, because he basically gets all these wonderful international musicians to come here for peanuts.
People that come here, like myself, like it so much that they sign on for the next time. And it is not because of the heaps of money that we were getting here.
Lots of music, lots of cellos, lots of cello players. I mean, it's just a big family comes together. It's always a big happening, of course.
It acts as a kind of a melting pot for international world-class cellists to come to bring their skills and their music and music making to Manchester, and it just raises the stakes.
It takes a person who is really well loved and trusted in this community that could bring together the so many different styles of playing and of thinking that exist in the cello house.
There is a kind of relationship that develops on so many levels at the festival, and that ripples out through the world.
People often suggest to me that I must have been thinking about a cello festival for a long time. And I actually never had such a thought in my life until prompted by the death of Pierre Fournier, which led to a concert in London from which we had proceeds to begin the Pierre Fournier Award. And then a colleague of mine in Manchester suggested we do exactly the same thing in Manchester. And I said, but wait a minute, we've had a concert. Let's do something different. Why don't we have a festival? And it just came out like that.
The foundation of the festival itself back in 1988 was predicated on the fact that it was to enhance students' experience. So the interrelationship between the festival itself and the conservatoire is absolutely at the heart and at the root of its being.
I'm studying here at the Royal Northern College of Music, and this festival is precisely the reason why I'm here in England. Because it's only held every 3 years, and I just happened to graduate from college in June of 2006, and I thought May 2007 is perfect timing.
I'm here to participate at the masterclass of Ralf Kirschbaum, and of course to listen to all the great concerts and all the great cellists here.
I've been looking forward to this festival basically since last year, and so I'm really grateful to be here.
It seems that everybody is here, everybody who plays the cello, and of course all the great famous cellists.
I would say the masterclasses go very much to the heart of what the festival is about. That in the sense of looking to the past, to the great cellists and their importance, and looking to the future of our instrument, the future of music. And the masterclasses bring those two elements together in a very poignant way.
I think one of the big motivations was developing a means by which young people could meet on a different level the great artist teachers in the world. How often someone would come to me, you know, I'm thinking of going abroad to study, who would you recommend? And so, yes, I would say a name or two names, but it was just names to them. But I can confidently say now, that is no longer the case. We have had all of the great artist teachers at one time or another come to Manchester. And the young people who are fortunate enough to be either studying in Manchester at the time or the hundreds who come from abroad have had the chance to hear these people perform, to hear them teach, in some instances to play for them, obviously in master classes, to go and speak to them in a very relaxed, natural, informal way.
How do you feel?
Shaky.
Okay, that's, it's funny. I was thinking, I was up there listening, I thought, my gosh, I'm so glad I was not in this chair. Okay, you're trying to perform, and then this is a class where someone's going to criticize you? Weird, right? Very straight. All right, so my question to you, first of all, what do you love about the Beethoven A major?
To me, it's undisturbed beauty, I think.
Okay, good. Let me ask, you just met Kathy when? Today? Okay. And what's it like playing with her? Do you like Kathy?
I like Kathy. Very much.
Just between you and me. What do you think of Kathy?
Actually, no, she's fantastic.
All right. Now, Kathy, what do you think of Jakob?
I think Jakob's incredibly brave.
I agree. Let's give a hand to Jakob for being incredible.
What you would do most of all as a teacher with your pupil is sit together and talk about it and ponder things. Because we have not made these pieces, we are also wondering. And then sit together, we have never time for that. And the masterclass is that situation.
Again, do you hear a difference in Jakob and Catherine's playing? Can someone actually tell us what you feel is the difference? They're playing more together. What was the first statement? More heart. Okay. Anybody else? More relaxed. More dialogue. More focused. More peace, and it sings better. Okay. Now, I'd like to actually ask you to play the very end and tell me what is different about that, okay? Can you all play 2, 5, 3? What's different about this time? You've heard the theme many times. What's new?
Well, it's obviously together.
Yes, it's together. Okay. What else?
What are you looking for?
I don't think there's a right answer. I mean, everything you're saying is, is absolutely right. Can anybody else tell me, is there anything else that's different? Kathy?
I feel it's optimistic for the first time in some way here.
Okay, now play. Okay, what's that?
Reply?
Sure, that's a reply. It's to a question, but it's the first time, and here I actually do have an answer. This is the first time, da 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 dum, ba da da dum. This is the first time you hear play. And what does Kathy do then? And what do you do? Go ahead. What does her left hand do? Now, what are you doing? What is she doing? What are you doing? Dominant?
It is not a concert, it is not a lesson, it is more kind of a laboratory where you try things out. And I've often said to my pupils, like I said this morning, when I do it well, you go home and you play much worse. But you have new ideas, and you will have, we make them hot and glowing.
He plays it very well, which makes a lot of work for me. Because if somebody doesn't play so, I say, very good, greetings to your mother, and that kind of thing. But now you do much better than that, so we have to discuss things. Bach makes a fugue for mainly one voice, and the audience is kindly asked to make a fugue out of that themselves. Huh? And to do that, he takes a theme which already is full of counterpoint. Bum bim, da da di da dim, da da di da dum, which is the nobleman, and the servant, dum bum bim, dum bum bum, brings a cup of tea or something, and the last note, of course, is on the beat. So the last note is a little more meat. Dum dum tea, polite. Here you are. Yeah? Not here you are. So, and I would say the 16th note, have no tension in your hand whatsoever. In some book years ago, I read the following sentence, which you might like. It says, a violist in the opera in the beginning of the 20th century that sounded like somebody dusting the mantelpiece. Okay. That sounds, huh? Now, can you dust the mantelpiece in your 16th? So, timpi. Can you do that for me?
The history and traditions of our instrument and its music and musicians is terribly important. I think it's important for anyone who, if you look at great composers, I think all of the great composers learned from their predecessors, from studying the techniques, the musical ideas of the great composers who came before them. When I do a master class, I'm very much hopeful that the student is going to go away with certain principles that they can develop for themselves, to find a way of expressing themselves in a way that befits whatever their musical ideas and aspirations are.
I was just thinking as you were playing, you've been here the entire time of the festival? So you've probably heard, I don't know, 30 cellists playing, one time or another. So when you think about that experience, what is it that strikes you that you'll go away and think about, having heard 30 different cellists?
Well, that's a great experience, and it's really that everybody is so different.
And I didn't tell her. That's exactly. Everyone is so different. The way they approach, physically, the way they sit, the relationship to the instrument, holding the bow, angle of the hand, left hand, all different. And all that adds up to, I would suggest, 30 very different characters. So I'm just asking myself, what could you do perhaps to bring even more character to it? And one thing definitely that struck me was how important the relationship of upbeat to downbeat is in this movement. In much of music, we look at, of course, that. But here you begin with those two Ds. And I have to say, they sounded pretty much the same to me. I was hoping you were going to do something to draw our attention to that character and how you might show us that in your phrasing, in the stress you bring. It has to be your answer to what it is. I'm just suggesting the situation that maybe we could look at. It reminds me a little bit a story that actually a colleague here told me once of Piatigorsky when he was a very young man, and he became, at the age of 22, the solo cellist of the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra. And shortly after he assumed the post, Chaliapin, the great Russian singer, came to sing. And seemingly, Piatigorsky had always idolized Chaliapin. And so he seized the opportunity to go and introduce himself and to say to him how much he had always, since, I think he said something like, since I was a little boy, you have been my idol. And every morning I take my cello from my case and I sit down and I try to sing like you. And seemingly, and this is the apocryphal part of the story, Chaliapin replied, "You poor fellow. Don't sing, speak." So it's a great story, and I think there's a great message to it. You played very beautifully the two Ds. You sang them beautifully. But for me, you didn't speak them. Let's play with that for a moment. Okay, look. Let me play, I love doing this. We're going to do a duet. So I'm going to play the upbeat, and you respond as you feel would be natural to whatever. I did something, I hope, I tried, inside the sound of the D as I went through the upbeat. And you didn't respond to it. Okay, let's try again. Was I okay? Yes. Okay. Well, let's reverse roles again then. Here we go. Good. Oh, yes. Okay. That was great. That was great. Because now you responded to what was happening. Okay, so now you do the whole thing.
She has this wonderful personality, this kind of big heart, I mean, anybody who meets him feels this, I think. I always did. And he has this very positive, smiley energy. And it makes you feel very much kind of relaxed, and the whole atmosphere is affected by this. So, of course, without him, I can't imagine all these people coming to Manchester.
I had already been teaching for 12 years at the Royal Northern College of Music. I knew the facilities well. To me, they seemed ideal as a home for such a festival, in that it would be a cosseted environment where everyone would be together, sharing whatever experiences would come out of the festival. And believe me, I had no idea what experiences that might be at that point in time. But it just seemed an ideal place, and I went to the principal of the college at that time, Sir John Manuel, discussed the idea with him. He was very receptive. More than that, I would say he was very encouraging and really provided the climate, the environment in which a festival like that could begin and ultimately could thrive.
Hello.
In those early years, there was a feeling amongst certain members of the administrative staff that the festival was a foreign body invading the college for a few days. It was because everything was new, and we were basically doing everything ourselves. I mean, the very first festival, it was just me.
What is it, the one copy that's out?
Do we know who has it?
Simon Parkin.
Simon has it? Oh, of course, because he's playing for the class.
That's right, yeah.
All right. Okay.
All right, then.
Thanks very much.
And I think it was after the festival in 1994, and John Manuel wanted to have a word with me. And he said to me, what would it take to include RNCM in the title of the festival? He wanted to cement the relationship. So from that point, it became the RNCM Manchester International Cello Festival.
Hello, Cello Festival. Oh, I see. Yes, you do need to know today. Okay, well, I'll try and get this done as soon as possible. I'm trying to find a singing teacher, vocal. Oh, Alec Crow.
I must say the administrative staff have always had a tremendous loyalty and enthusiasm for what this festival is about.
Thank heavens you're there. It's Sally from the Cello Festival. Do you have any cooey songs?
And they've proven to be excellent at their jobs.
It looks great.
Two of them were former students, cello students. One of them was my own student. And because of their love and passion for the cello, it has been an ideal kind of thing for them.
Well done.
It's quite remarkable how many of the cellists who play actually studied here in the first place. And of course, many of them will have studied with Ralph personally, but many won't have done. But they will have all experienced the Cello Festival during their time as students.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Rebecca Carrington.
Rebecca Carrington, she was always an individual breaking out in her own way.
Have all the fun. I'm caught up. I don't know what to do. I'm 47 and I'm looking great.
She came to me very early on with an idea of doing something combining the voice and the cello. And I encouraged her. I said, of course.
Thank you, but I was never going to be the next Madonna because I was supposed to be, according to some people, the next Jacqueline Dupre. Now, for those of you who don't know who she was a very famous English classical cellist who did have a reputation for being extremely passionate.
There is something about the warmth of the place, as soon as you come in the door, that you feel that, may I say, you don't necessarily always get in every other conservatoire. And also the building itself, because it's so open. It's a modern building, it's an open plan building, it has a feeling of openness and friendliness. And I think it's that, of course with the people themselves, that helps create this frisson of sort of togetherness.
It's a little bit, I suppose, like going into a monastery. The togetherness, the act of being together, sharing meals, rubbing shoulders non-stop for these 5 days is actually one of the great attractions of the festival for all the artists who come.
From the very early stage, Ralph and I talked about the festival, and I know it was always his ambition to grow it, to make it even more international, to make it a celebration of great music making, of repertoire, and for me that's very important, of course. So I think I've always tried to support his ideas about that.
The festival has developed a kind of reputation that even the megastars feel it's something they want to be a part of. An interesting point is Andras Schiff in this particular festival. I've wanted Andras to come on several occasions, but it had to be the right time, the right project, something that I knew would appeal to him.
And I knew, of course, that he had been involved over the past 3 or 4 years in a project with Miklos Perini, performing and recording all the works for cello and piano by Beethoven.
I went to Andras as a friend, and I said, look, is it possible you could be in Manchester on the 3rd of May? And would you be in Manchester on the 3rd of May? It's a myth that our repertoire is small. It's true that there are certain great composers from the 19th century, 20th century, who didn't perhaps write for the cello. But in 9 festivals, aside from repeating cycles of the Bach suites and hearing occasionally, if not all, the cycle of Beethoven sonatas, I mean, there have been a few repetitions. But in all of those festivals and in all of those concerts, and that's a lot of concerts, very few repetitions of repertoire. We have quite a broad repertoire, and particularly if you move through the 20th century and now into the 21st century. The gala concert was one in which I wanted to widen the scope of what was being heard. Therefore, I was giving much more latitude to the wishes of my artists than perhaps I might have done in other events. I said to Yo-Yo, tell me what you'd like to play. Roughly we had, I said, 20 minutes. You can fill that with basically what you want.
You know, when you look at these cellists here, you will see that all of them are kind of actors. The cello makes a kind of a ventriloquist of you, isn't it? And because we are simple people, we are maybe a little shy, we will never dare to say, oh, I love you so much on stage, like an actor can do it. But when you play a cello, and people would say, it sounds as if you say, I love you. So, me? Oh, it must be that cello, you know.
having a cello making competition was an idea which was presented to me by the former head of strings, Rodney Slatford. I thought about it and thought, what a wonderful idea.
It's just a fantastic opportunity. As makers, we're invited to submit instruments, and they're marked on craftsmanship and on tone. And yeah, it's a very prestigious award. If you are successful, then yes, it's a very worthwhile competition.
The idea of having such a competition was giving the cello community a chance to become acquainted with the makers around the world.
This is number 23, 2-3.
Do you want to be another instrument?
You want to try the same cello?
Me?
Yes, please.
Okay. Same piece? No.
The makers find the competition in Manchester so special because the playing judges are great cellists themselves. They're people who've been in the world of cello making for years themselves because they've been interested from their own points of view.
Anything else?
See the bottom thing?
I think that people all over the world are struck by this closeness to the human voice. And composers, luckily, when they write, include that quality. There are composers who decide that the cello is something to be hit and struck and knocked and all sorts of things. I personally avoid those pieces because it doesn't show the instrument to its best advantage. Some of the most beautiful contemporary works are, once again, finding the soul of the instrument, which is very important.
The things that go on behind the scenes in terms of preparation for each concert and so forth are carried through by the staff of the Royal Northern College of Music. And they do a magnificent job.
Your mom's in 4, somebody else is in 3. Just look for where there's cellos and go in a different one. I think 5 and 2 are still open.
Okay, great.
Sort out. You guys think about it. I don't have to like escort you or anything, you know.
I mean, they're put under great pressure a lot of the time because the events happen sometimes very much one on top of the other. The performing spaces are laid out in such a way that you can comfortably have 2 and even 3 events going on at the same time.
He's asked if it's possible if you would be willing to announce the program change. I was going to do the same. Okay. Thank you.
It also means that everyone is there in that place together. The great artists, the young students, they're rubbing shoulders all the time.
I'm having salt and pepper tofu because I love it. And I'm having pad thai.
Tofu. There you go.
I'm afraid I have to announce slight change in the program, courtesy of British Airways. My darling daughter Lily, poor thing, spent hours waiting for her flight from Brussels being delayed and eventually cancelled for technical reasons. After 5 more hours waiting, she was sent to Birmingham, but her suitcase didn't arrive. And unfortunately, the music was in there as well. And the only thing I could locate, the only Russian composer who wrote romances, which we're going to play for you, which was popular enough to be in the library here, was Rachmaninoff. So we played 3 Rachmaninoff romances, and the last one you probably will recognize anyway.
For me, it's most perfect surroundings because I know it looks strange because I have kind of grayish hair, so to say. But in reality, I feel extremely young in spirit. Always when I play with youth orchestras or make chamber music with young musicians, I feel totally at home. The cellists altogether are funny people somehow. No other instrumentalists have these societies, congresses, clubs all over the world. It was obviously very much influenced by personality of one of my great teachers who unfortunately passed away 10 days ago. Mstislav Shostakovich, and he was very much very influential in this in Russia in any case, but not only.
He came to see us here at the RNCM and gave one of the most memorable masterclasses I've ever experienced in my life. And of course, he's the sort of godfather, isn't he, of the cello in the 20th century.
You couldn't have met Slava at any point and forgotten it, even if you only met him for a couple of minutes. It was that kind of dynamic human being. And I was very privileged to have met him on more occasions than that. And of course, many of his very close friends were with us that evening in the opening of the festival. Many of his very special students are here. And in a way, what greater tribute to this man and what he has given to the world of the cello. It was very moving to me to learn that Rostropovich wanted to come to Manchester in order to launch the new book that had been written about him by his former student, the British cellist Elizabeth Wilson. Sadly, as we know, because of his illness, he came to the stage where he was canceling everything. And I was talking particularly to Elizabeth Wilson, who was talking in turn to others of his former students who were going to be there. And the idea arose that definitely these students had to play something in honor of their great master. Having so many of his former students there, it seemed to me the obvious thing that we needed to do was have a discussion in which they could reminisce about their time with Slava, both as students and afterwards.
It seemed like there is a club of former Rostropovich students. I mean, do you call it club or not? But it's definitely a very strong.
A shared bond.
A shared, yeah, and the influence was so enormous on all of us, I think. But it stayed all these years. And when we meet, which is a great opportunity, it's sort of all there because of intensity of experience we shared.
Ну, надо сказать, вот мы все его обожали, по-моему.
We did adore him. We actually were quite afraid of him as well, if we were quite honest. No, I was terrified the first 2 years. But we did adore him as well, that's no question. Yes,
И удивительный феномен, таких просто не бывает больше. Человек, который с миллиардами людей общался, да? И каждый из этого миллиарда имеет что-то свое с ним.
The other element which became extremely important was a film that Elizabeth Wilson was going to make for us. She actually put this together with a filmmaker in Italy from her hospital bed, and it was a most beautiful tribute to this great cellist.
As great as he was as a cellist, which obvious, I think he was even greater as a teacher, because his unbelievable combination of his unbelievable imagination, fantasy, intellect, humor, and everything was just too grand for our little instrument.
Характеры музыки Прокофьев воспринимал невероятно ярко и точно. Там играет виолончель наверху с гобоем в терции. А внизу играет труба. И вот когда здесь играет, я сказал Прокофьев, Сергей Сергеевич, не низко ли это трубе? Здесь уже, естественно, с гобоями виолончель играет со скрипками, а труба продолжает играть. Прокофьев мне рассердился, пришел в жуткий восторг, говорит, что вы, Слав? Не подумайте, это для него настолько низко, невероятно трудно, и он будет сидеть весь красный от натуги.
He always said himself that his actual cello playing is probably the least important thing he did as a musician, as a cellist. Because he thought, okay, you see, I'll be gone, and okay, there will be some recordings left, but it's not the most important thing. He said the most important thing is his influence on contemporary composers.
Less than 2 years ago, when we were driving here to Manchester, where he was very kindly and graciously giving a class, and I asked him about the whole process of premiering works and what that involved. And he told me with great enthusiasm that he was preparing in 3 weeks to go to Vienna for his 224th world premiere of a piece by Penderecki. And I said, but all 224 on the cello? He said, no, not all on the cello. I mean, you know, some as conductor, some in chamber music, even a couple with piano, he said, but mainly cello. I mean, you know, this is the output of, you know, perhaps 10 normal musicians. But it's an incredible example to us, and we've all, I think, taken that on board, that it's our responsibility as musicians to be alive to what's going on. It is very important to the festival to have new music. It always has been one of the core values of the festival. We've always had commissions, and equally importantly, looking for works that have been neglected. The work by John Tavener, O Holy City, was of great interest to me on many levels. One, because it very much was a part of the British theme. Two, because it was for a combination of sounds and voices and cello. Music isn't some museum piece that's dead and gone. And oftentimes when you do new music, you're taking a risk. It might be good, it might be rubbish. But new music is important, of course it is, and being involved in the process is very exciting.
I was asked to write a piece for 6 cellos. That's how it came to pass, quite simply. And I decided that I didn't want to write something which was terribly heavily serious, although it was tempting. And I wrote a piece called A Little Trowie Music, and Trowies in Orkney, where I live, they're the first cousins of the trolls. There are lovely, lovely stories, at Hogmanay particularly, that after you've been to the celebrations and had a drink or two, if you're very lucky, you can hear the Trowies, the trolls, in their mounds, which are the prehistoric burial mounds, playing their music and having their dance.
playing this work 6 of the finest young cellists of this country today. I've worked with the 6, and so I've got to know the piece a little bit. It's full of life, very, very interesting. The festival is from Britain to Britain. In a way, that is the central point from which radiate many other ideas. And so yes, contemporary composers, living composers is very important. We have the concerto by John Kaskin, which we actually had at the festival many years ago, played by the dedicatee, Heinrich Schiff, with the Northern Sinfonia, of which he was the music director at that time. And I was very attracted to the piece then, and I felt it fit so beautifully into the pattern of, you know, the fabric, if you will, of this festival. My idea for the Kaskin was to have a visiting artist who perhaps wasn't even familiar with the piece, I mean, to know about it. Ask them to play it. And in my mind's eye, the one to play it was Alexander Rudin. How wonderful it would be to have a new proponent of the Kaskin cello concerto who might choose on other occasions in other parts of the world to perform it again, or if not, to encourage other young cellists in Russia or elsewhere where he's teaching to take up the concerto. And he agreed. We have the British premiere of a work that was composed a year and a half ago by Colin Matthews for the rededication of the cathedral in Dresden.
It was commissioned by the American Friends of Dresden as a multinational commission, a British composer, an American orchestra, the New York Philharmonic, and the German cellist Jan Vogler for the reconsecration of the Frauenkirche, which had been completely destroyed after the war. The whole basis of the piece are the sounds of the bells, nearly all of which had to be recast because they'd been destroyed. And when I heard them separately and together, this extraordinary harmonic spectrum opened up, and it immediately gave me the whole background for the piece. It was an extraordinary occasion in Dresden, very emotional. I think for the inhabitants of Dresden to see this great landmark come back to life was astonishing for them and very moving. I felt very humble in a way to be part of it.
It used to be that artists who were playing in the same concert, and even if they were the next performer, they would come and sit there for maybe half of the work preceding them because they were so interested and they wanted to hear and they didn't want to miss anything. And I noticed the other day, I mean, you mentioned that there was one particular great artist who was playing in a major concert with orchestra just after the interval of the concert, and he sat in the hall for the whole first half because he didn't want to miss anything. And then went back and in the 20 minutes prepared himself to come out and play, and played amazingly well. I'm very, very pleased, obviously, with the group of artists that are here amongst us for these few days of the festival. On so many grounds, I'm pleased. I know that they come with total enthusiasm, selflessly, to the festival because they really enjoy it. They love the atmosphere. They certainly aren't getting rich. Nobody gets any more than a pittance. It's this something about the atmosphere of being together, of sharing these experiences of mutual respect and admiration and even affection. We've done a lot. 2 decades, 20 years of cello festivals. And I felt it was time to draw a line under that. And to draw a line at the highest point. Because for me, this festival, in a way, has been the highest point, will be the highest point. So it was not an easy decision to make, but as each day goes by, I know that it was the right decision to make. Everything came together for this festival in such a way, a unique way in a way, I felt. The particular cast of characters, the wonderful artists and friends who are here. The fact that 6 of the 7 Pierre Fournier Award winners are playing in this festival, that was the genesis of the whole thing. And I said to myself, this is the time.
I'll just speak for myself. There's some weird thing that you possess, a gift of generosity, of spirit, and of inclusiveness that makes everybody feel welcome. And in particular, I think all of us are here because, you know,
Twisted your arm.
no, not because you twisted my arm, but because, you know, as I get older, the world that is really interesting belongs to people that are younger than we are. And the fact that you're interested in that and have devoted so much of your time and effort to making that a priority is I think is a testament to everything that you've been doing at this particular occasion and also throughout the years. And so thank you for this cello festival and all the cello festivals that we have brought together. And I think it's all good.
I was thinking when Mission was playing Don Quixote the other night. That has been the kind of journey that I have had in these last 2 decades in building these festivals. And needless to say, all of the support and help that I've alluded to, I certainly can't leave out you, the public, who have come in the numbers that you have, in particularly this year, which for me is a very special festival. I have so many of my dearest friends and colleagues performing, and my goodness, how they perform. I think we all agree. I mean, night after night, it's been just breathtaking. So without you, without the artists, we simply would not have been able to develop and generate these festivals. And so my thanks go from the bottom of my heart to all of you.